So now that we're done doing our photo shoot for the painting with light, let's go ahead and jump straight into Snapseed. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a photo. And I'm going to go to open from my device. And over here we've got our pictures from that photo shoot. And, there's, what we ended up having to do is, because each part was only a 1 second exposure, where we've got kind of parts of it broken up. So I'm going to start with my first one over here, which is going to be my letter P. And then what Snapseed has is this thing called a multiple exposure. So we're going to go Tools, and then down here at the bottom, there's one that says double exposure. So we're going to click there. Now, right now it looks exactly the same, but what we want to do is we're going to go to this bottom icon down here, which is a picture with a plus sign, and we're going to click that. And then once we choose it, we're going to go back into our photos and we're going to choose the next letter. So I'm actually going to use two different ones to create the H. So I'm going to take maybe this one to start with. And once I have that one, we need to check kind of our blending mode, right? Which is this one here. It looks like a little, like couple of different like swatches. And there's several different ones. The default one is probably where you'll start. And, they're overlapping, but it's not really working the way that I'd like it to. You can try each of them. But I think the one that we're going to end up using is one that says add. We don't want subtract, overlay. So let's try add. And then once I have that set, I'm going to say OK. Now, once I have that, I do have an ability to blend them a little bit more. So notice like there's a little bit of an offset here on the ridge line. So up here at the very top, there's a button and it lets me edit those layers. And I can click here where it says View Edits. So what I'm going to do is right now I've got double exposure. And so if I click on the little arrow here, it gives me three options. I could delete that extra layer, or I can paint the layer, or I can play with the sliders, which is going to be its opacity. So I'm going to do the paint. So right now it's saying it wants 100% double exposure, which means wherever I paint, it's going to put that double exposure. So the H is right here, so I can just come over here and paint that H. And I also want it to kind of build up over here, with some of that so that it becomes brighter, right? So I want to paint in these areas, but actually I don't want that skyline. So I might come over here and come back down to 0 and really kind of carefully paint along that ridge line where it'll get rid of that double exposure and keep my sky dark. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit the check mark. Now my H is kind of missing a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and hit this back arrow and we're going to add another layer. So I'm going to go double exposure, add a photo, go to my list, and then right next to that beginning part of the H, there's also like a line that's coming straight down. Let's try that one. There we go. So that gives it a little bit more of the shape that I was hoping for the H. And it looks like it didn't really do much in my skyline. Those lined up pretty good, so I'm just going to say check mark. I don't think I need to re-edit that one. So I'm going to go Tools, double exposure, add a photo. Now I'm looking for an O that's over there on that left side. Oops, too far. So let's take a look here. How about this O here? And I'm going to say check. Now again, that one had a little bit of that like double effect and my sky's getting too bright. So again, I'm going to click here at the arrow. I'm going to say View Edits. And I'm going to click on that double exposure. I'm going to paint it in. Again, it's at 100% double exposure. So again, I want to add that O here. Might want a little bit of this area for some extra brightness, but I want to stay away from that kind of ridge line. It's getting a little bit of kind of some double exposure back in there too. Check. Go back. And then, so we're going to go Tools, double exposure, add an exposure, choose a picture. Now we're looking for the T. Now the T I also did in two parts. So let's start with maybe this one and then check. And then I don't want that sky to get too bright. So I'm going to go edit and brush and 100%. So we'll get that line there. And again, we want some of this part to brighten, but not that ridge line. Check. Okay. And then we need the cross part to the T. So double exposure, add a photo, recent. And then here's let's go with that. T, check. And again, looks like we're getting a little bit of that in the back, so we'll just paint that in. We'll go to double exposure, paint, and then we want this part here. And then we're going to go back, tools, double exposure. We need the final O. Let's go with that one. There we go. So we'll say yes. And again, I just am going to paint that in. So I'm going to go view edits. Here's my last double exposure. I'm going to go to the paint and then just bring that O in over here. There we go. So now I've got my painting with light. And again, even though it was almost pitch black, it's also built up some of that exposure over time from the stacking of those images. We've kept the sky fairly dark, and now we've got our word spelling out photo, although it kind of looks like an E there, but I did the best I could. So before we're done, we need to do a couple of things. We're going to go ahead and go to this button down here that says export. And let's go ahead and hit this save a copy. And then I'm going to hit export one more time. And then in order to post it to Canvas, we need to use this one here that says export as a JPEG. So we'll click there. And now we have successfully exported. So then that can then be posted so you can get that to your Canvas site so you can get it turned in and get credit. And then the other thing we're going to do is there's one other way that we looked at doing our double exposures or our painted with light. So we're going to go up to open, and we're going to go to from our device. And then up here, there was another section where we added light to the actual background, right? So what we're going to do in this case, it's some of these photos. So it kind of works its way across. So this is that first one. So we're going to go ahead and click there. And notice we only got a little bit of flashlight on that far right side. So what we want to do is now, keep building up some of these other areas that we painted with the light as well. So it's going to be the same technique. We're going to go Tools, and then we're going to go Double Exposure, and then we're going to go Recent. So let's take a look here. So this was the first one we did. So let's get that rock there in the middle. And, again, it's starting to build up a little exposure, but I think we're okay. We'll keep an eye on that part in case we need to add something. So we'll say check, and then Tools, and then Double Exposure. So that was that one. Maybe let's try this one here. So that opens that part up. And again, if I don't want that sky to get too bright, I can always come over here and go to View Edits, click on my double exposure, go to the paint, and then just add that little bit, that extra light that we just did in here. And if I don't like a part of it, I can also, let's say I didn't want it to get too much on that rock, I can also take that part out. So back, and then I'll go Tools and Double Exposure and Plus. Okay, and so then let's see, let's maybe get, I think these are some of that background area, so let's grab maybe that one. It kind of adds a little bit of detail and texture there. Although it does look like we got a little bit of doubling back here, so let's kind of clean that up a little bit. All right, and then I think there's a little bit maybe over here in this foreground part, so let's try maybe adding that in. Oh yeah, that helps a lot. So let's say okay to that. And now this is an aesthetic decision. So, there's a little bit of that flashlight that's showing up in there. So I could choose to leave that. That might do some painting with light and kind of mix the techniques. If I wanted to get rid of that part again, I would go into my layers, view edits, and then click on that one and then paint in. And as I paint, again, I'm going to bring in that part, but try to avoid that top part. Now, if I paint that in on accident, I can bring this down to 0 and then take away that top area. But that added a lot of detail here in that foreground part. And so that brings in, quite a bit of brightness over on that side. And I think there's one other that has a little squiggle over here. So let's see. Now, with that one, again, you can just, it's a decision. So, if I don't want that squiggle, I can say check. and it looks like there's a little bit of double exposure happening anyway. And so again, I'm going to come in here and do my editing, and then I can just add mostly this bottom part, you know, again, because it gives me a little bit more of the ground, you know, and if I paint too far, it's going to add those other parts over here. So I can always bring that back down to 0% and just, you know, if I needed to, I can also pinch and zoom and then use 2 fingers to drag, and then I could just take away, you know, this area here. Maybe there's my foot as well, so I might want to take that part out. You know, it's up to you. Now I've got a little lone foot. Or if I didn't like this brightest part, I could also take that part out as well. Yeah. So I can kind of manipulate that, you know, or maybe I bring a little bit of that in just so that there's a little bit of it. So, you know, we've got choices about how we want to go about affecting those parts. And then once I've got it all together, again, just like before, once I say check and I'm happy with all of the edits, now I've got a much brighter, you know, that was my original picture, right? There's the edited picture. So we brought in all this painted light. And then all we have to do is we want to, again, do our exports, save a copy, and then also export as a JPEG. And so you're just going to post those 2 photos, one where you've painted the subject and one where you've painted or done the drawing with light for your assignment. If you have questions, always good idea to watch the video, rewind, look at those buttons closely, those sort of things, you know, so that it makes sense while you're trying to do it. Otherwise, you can always send me a quick question or a Loom video so that I can see what it is you're trying to do. Okay, bye.